Welcome to Trimming Horse Hooves for Beginners.
I'm Becky. I used to live in the consumer rat race just like you. But one day I had enough, so I sold it all, moved to the country, and built my own log cabin with my own two hands. Now I spend my time discovering new ways to live a simple, healthy lifestyle with more free time and way less stress. Then sharing what I've learned with you. Welcome to Becky's Homestead.
My name is Becky, and I'm so happy you're interested in learning how to trim horse hooves. This video is for people who are learning to be farriers or do-it-yourselfers like me. When I was a beginner, I had lots of questions. What are all the parts of a hoof? What tools do I need? How do I know where to trim? And more importantly, where not to trim? How do I know if I did it right? This is the video I wish I had when I was a hoof trimming beginner. I'll be guiding you every step of the way, from being a total beginner to being able to trim horse hooves for yourself or others. Let's get started.
Here's the bottom of a hoof. I'm going to show you the different parts of it. Right here is the heel. It's the back of the heel, and this part is soft. There's no hoof wall on here. It's just flesh, and it's usually kind of gray in color. And this, this will hurt the horse if you cut it. It's a problem. You have to take care of it. If it steps on a nail and it punctures this area right here, it's soft tissue. It bleeds and it hurts the hoof. Just so you know that's the heel. It can bruise and, whatever you can do to soft flesh, that can get the same thing. Then it goes down to this pointy piece in the middle, which looks like, a triangle. That's the frog. And that's kind of rubbery feeling. I mean, when it's dried out and it hasn't been trimmed and taken well care of, you can't really tell. But if you were to trim it up, it's rubbery, kind of spongy rubbery. So that part also, if you go deep enough, it can hurt the horse and he will limp if he steps on a nail or whatever, or you cut it too short. So, and then after that, this part here in the middle, all this area through here is the sole. Again, it has live tissue once you reach a certain point. So the dead tissue is on top. And you can carve that away with your knife when you're giving your horse a trim. You can tell it's dead because it'll be kind of chalky and flaky, and it'll come off pretty easy. And then once you get low, you get deep enough, you get all that dead part off. It'll start feeling rubbery as well. You definitely want to stop there because that will bleed if you take too much of the dead sole off. So you have to be careful. There's a limit. You can take it off, but not too much. And then this area here is the hoof wall. And this is the part that grows out like your fingernail. It gets longer and longer and longer and longer. This is the part we will be trimming with the nippers and then filing with the file. This is the important part that you want to get balanced and even. This is the back hoof of my horse. When you pick up your horse's hoof, it'll probably look similar to this. I've already cleaned out some of the sole here. You can tell it's the white part. So you look at this hoof and you're like, wow, that looks like a mess. What you're hoping to have it end up looking like is this hoof over here. So you kind of get a little intimidated because you have to bring this hoof over to what this hoof looks like. So you might not, you're a little nervous at first. You don't know what to trim and where to trim. So I'm going to point it out to you so you can tell. So this is probably similar to what your horse's hoof will look like. As you can tell, these heels are uneven. Right here's the heel. This is the inside of the hoof. It's shorter. If you draw a line straight across there, it's shorter than this hoof on the outside, the heel on the outside. So you want to trim both of those because what you're trying to do is get a balanced, symmetrical hoof in the end, at least as close as you can get. So what you need to do is trim these heels back here to the beginning of the frog. So you don't want to go right to this line right here, which is the absolute back. I always come forward a bit. So, let's just say 1/4 inch or so back to here. And then when you do that on both sides, now here's the line. You wouldn't want to go farther than that. That is the back of the heel. So you don't want to take it that far, forward about 1/4 inch. And then you can trim all this, which looks like so much, off. But once you do that, just that is going to make the hoof more symmetrical because the heels will be even. Also, if you look right here where I've trimmed, you can see this line, not where I trimmed, where I've cleaned out the sole. You can see this line that goes all the way around. And that's where the hoof wall, which is this part, which is what you're going to be trimming off, is the excess hoof wall. You can see where the hoof wall joins the sole. And this is the sole of the foot. So this sole of the foot, once you dig it out far enough, it has feeling in it. It can bleed, and it can hurt the horse if you go too far. This hoof wall right here, the part you're going to trim off, has absolutely no feeling in it whatsoever. So that's why you can nail a shoe to a horse, because you're nailing it through the hoof wall. So you don't have to worry about trimming the hoof wall. It won't hurt the horse at all. The trick and the key is where to stop trimming. How far do you go? How much do you trim off? So your guide is going to be after you clean out the sole, and you don't want to go too deep because like I said, that'll bleed and it'll also make your horse limp. It won't walk very well. So you want to trim that out so it's white. Get all the chalky part off. At first it comes off pretty easy. It comes off in layers and it's kind of chalky and you can tell it's just dead and it comes off easy. So go ahead and clean that all out. And really, once you start seeing the line, take your hoof knife and really clean out this line right here. And you're just doing that so you have a clear guide of where to cut that hoof wall. Okay, so once that's done, you're going to take your nippers, and the only part where you're not going to have your line is back at the heels. So that's why I described where to cut the heels. So you want to find the very back part, and then you want to come forward. If you're a little too nervous, 1/4 inch isn't enough, you can come a little farther forward. And also, if you're afraid to do it too far with the nippers because you're not sure of yourself, just, nip some of it off and then you can use your file to do the rest. That's what I did in the beginning because I just wasn't confident enough to really start chomping away with the nippers because I didn't want to hurt my horse. So this is the only part where you're not really going to have, your line as your guide. So, nip your heels, but make sure they're even on both sides when you go across. And I mean, if you need to get a ruler and lay it across there to make sure they're even, just go ahead and do it. Just take your time and just try to get it as even as possible. So then you're going to take your nippers and you're going to nip right along this line. And once again, if you're nervous, don't get right on the line. You can back off the line just a bit and leave a little bit. And then you can do the rest with the file. In fact, I would suggest that in the first, few trimmings. Just go ahead and leave a little extra and you can file it bit by bit to get close to where you need it. That way you won't make a huge mistake like you could with the nippers. And once you do that, it's done. This hoof, you can see right here, it doesn't need any trimmed off there. There's no hoof wall extra right there. So what you're going to do is trim, this area. You're going to stop. You're not going to trim that at all. And then you're going to trim the heel. So in the end, it'll all be even. And this will just flow right into the trimmed part and right into the trimmed heel. If you look at this foot, minus this hoof wall, it does look similar to this picture here, if this were all gone. and you were just looking at the line, it ends up looking similar to this hoof. That's basically what you're going to aim for. Make sure your nippers are sharp. And this horse here, you know, I left a lot of hoof on it so you could see what a hoof looks like that really needs a trim. Now this is a front hoof that I have already trimmed, and what I'm trying to show you here is how you hold the hoof up and you look down the hoof with the hoof hanging nicely. Now what you want is this to be nice and even across here, because that's what you're trying to get, is a nice balanced hoof. You don't want this side really long out to here maybe, you know, and then this side short so it's crooked at an angle, because then your horse will be, you know, standing at an angle, and that affects the bones going all the way up through the leg, and it also continues on up the leg through the shoulder and affects the back. So you don't want your horse to have back problems and all. So, you know, you want to try to get the hoof landing on the ground as flat as possible. You want the whole hoof to hit the ground at the same time. You don't want it to land on this outside part. I said, you don't want the hoof to land on this outside part first, because that definitely gives strain and stress up through the legs, and it affects all that. And if you read a book and you find out how all this hoof and leg is designed, it's just magnificent how all the little parts work together. Here's another shot of the same thing. Now, you know, it's not absolutely perfect. Now, if I was to criticize my own work, I would say I could probably take a tiny bit more off right here if I were to make this perfectly balanced. This is a side shot of how you would hold that hoof when you were sighting it, just from, you know, back a couple feet so you can really see. You hold the hoof and you want to hold it. This is the pastern. You want to hold it behind that. Let the hoof just hang in a natural position, and you can, you know, raise this a little bit or lower it a little bit so you can get a shot of straight down the hoof from the heel to the toe. A back hoof is a little pointier than a front hoof. Just so you know the difference when you pick them up, because you will notice the difference. The back hoof is a little pointier. A front hoof is more of a kind of a perfect circle. So just so you know that, and you know, you don't try to file that flat or file that off. You know, they dig in with this little pointy part usually. And I just follow this line like I was telling you when I trim, and that's basically the natural shape of your horse's foot. So whatever that is, you know, and in the back it will make it a little more pointy.
Now that we've gone over all the parts of the hooves, let's talk about the tools we'll be using. Today I will be showing you the tools you'll need to give your horse a basic hoof trim. I have a pair of nippers here. I actually have two here. I just want to show you. These are like heavier. They come in different, I guess, weights, the metal. They have different color handles. But what these are like gigantic toenail clippers. It's the part you will snip, snip, snip around the hoof and trim the hoof with. So these are called hoof nips. And you'll need to buy a good pair of hoof nips. Second is the big file. And after you trim the hoof with the hoof nippers, you use the file, you know, just like your fingernail file after you clip them. You want to just kind of even it off and make it look nice and smooth. That's what you use the big file for. It has a rough side, and then it has a fine side. I basically just use the rough side when I'm doing the horse's feet. This is a hoof pick. It's a very basic grooming tool. Most people that have a horse already have a hoof pick. But in case you don't know, this is what you clean the horse's hoof with before you use your nippers and your file. And then this is called a paring knife. It is a tool that you need to maybe pare down the horse's frog a little bit, or maybe the sole. But I'll show you how you use all these tools in just a second. Last but not least is this really nice tool called the hoof jack. And it has magnets on it. And what makes it nice is you can hook your tools on the magnets because they stick right on there. And then the best part about the tool is, and the whole purpose of the tool, is the horse can just rest its foot on here. and it doesn't have to hold its foot on, and it just makes it very comfortable for the horse. And it also helps me because I don't have to hold the horse's foot up while I work. So it's a really, really handy tool, and I just love the hoof jack. It really makes it easy to trim the feet yourself if you're a homesteader and you want to do this chore on your own without calling a farrier. Now that we've gone over the parts of the hooves, we've discussed the tools we'll be using, let's go actually trim a hoof. This is Minnie. She's a 22-year-old standardbred, and I will be showing you how to do a hoof trim on her. And she's a good girl. She's nice and calm. Okay, let's go. I'm cleaning the dirt and the debris out of her hoof with the hoof pick. It's along the frog, like I explained earlier. The hoof pick is pointy, so it digs it out pretty easy, although the stuff is packed in there tightly because the horse is heavy, and as it's walking, it packs it down in there. So just go ahead and just dig that out so you can see what you're doing. And then the next tool you use is the knife. And this helps you get it cleaner because in order to trim the hoof, you have to be able to see. And the hoof of all horses under here is white. So you want to get it down to the white part. So I just start cleaning like this. And you don't want to take too much off. But you want to get it down to the white part. I'm taking off the dead sole. It takes a little work to get it going at first because it is dry. But as you can see, it's kind of flaky and chalky looking at places. So it's a little work once again, but if your tools are sharp, you just keep at it and it comes off easy. Okay, I'm going to point out the different parts of the hoof. This is the heel right here. And then it's like part of the frog that goes down like a piece of pie or a piece of pizza. This is like a rubbery piece of the hoof. And that's how it's supposed to be, is rubbery. So when you use the hoof pick, you're cleaning out alongside of the frog. And you're getting all the dirt because there's like little grooves on both sides of the frog. And then with the knife, I'm cleaning the sole, and the dead sole is what you're paring off there, and it's kind of chalky. So you get that off so you can see good. And usually I like to take this part of the hoof, is the horseshoe part that looks like the horseshoe part. You want to try to bring the heel back to the heel. So you want to cut it back there. There. And I'll show you that now because the next tool I'm going to use are the nippers. Stand, Minnie. This hoof isn't very long. Let me explain. I'm just going to be trimming to the edge of the clean white part that I just pared off with this knife. That's kind of the line you go by. That's why you clean it. You don't want to go too far. You don't want to go past the line. You want to go just to the white part. So you want to, you don't want to go too far. Otherwise, it's like clipping your fingernail too short. It won't kill you, but it definitely hurts. You always start right here on the edge. All right, I'm starting to trim, and I'm trimming off just to the white line. At first, you want to just trim a small amount so you don't go too far. You can always take a little more with your nippers or later on with your file. So don't just start too deep and go too far because then, you can't put it back once it's on there. So just take your time and do a little each pass. And you do the toe first, and then you get that piece off, and then you go back and you look at the heels,
and then you trim the heel back to where it should be. As you can see, this is like the end of your fingernail when you clip your fingernail. It's kind of the same idea. It just comes off right there. Now right now I'm taking the heels back to be even with the back of the frog. Always take into consideration that every horse is a little different. This mare's heels don't go back as far as my pony's heels do. So you just want to look at each hoof individually and then take the hoof heels back to the back of the frog. And the hoof is just about even with the frog. So when it steps on the ground, all those parts touch, the frog and the hoof wall. You don't want it crooked, so the horse is walking crooked. You want it flat on the ground. So it has to be balanced. One way to look at that, if you're a beginner, is to grab the horse's leg above this ball, hold it so the hoof is hanging, and then look down. And that'll show you how level that is, or balanced you might want to call that. That's very important because that affects the bones going all the way up the horse's leg. As you can see, this is a little jagged and crooked. And it's just like filing your fingernails nice after you clip them with the clippers. Basically, that's what we're doing right now. Just to make it look nice. And as you can see in the end, get right in front, it's a nice, round, healthy foot. You don't want cracks in your horse's feet. As you can see, she's got a nice, healthy foot. Okay, we just finished the front feet. Now we're going to come back here and do the back feet, and I'll show you how to do them too. It's basically the same, although obviously they're a little different because of the way they rest on the hoof jack. So here we go. Pick it up. Good girl. Once again, I'm cleaning out this frog, and now I'm starting to pare the sole. That's far way down. She got funny little feet. Oh me. Oh me. Oh me. You can trim only 2 feet at a time. Just remember, it's 2 front feet or 2 back feet. In the beginning, I was slow and the horse got impatient, so I would do 2 front feet one day and the 2 back feet the next day. And that worked out nicely because then the horse would stand there. In the beginning, when I was slow, I'd take too long and the horse wouldn't want to stand any longer and she'd start to be fidgety and whatnot. So I would just have to do 2 front feet one day and 2 back feet the next. Till I got a little faster and knew what I was doing better. Then I could do all 4 feet in one day.
when you're done clipping, let me zoom in real close so you can like point out what you clipped and what you didn't clip and like exactly.
Hold up behind the knee and let the foot hang. Move the stuff out of the way and look down that hoof and see if it's balanced, because that's the way you look down the back foot. You get the idea of balance. Mommy, your old foot. It's getting stiff. You used to be a limber girl. I want you to get a good shot of how nice and round it is so people can get a look at that. Okay, there it is. Nice round hoof.
Okay, you're ready to go out and do it yourself.
Sign up for Becky's Homestead newsletter. Go to beckysHomestead.com and sign up on the right. You'll get articles, news, and specials from Becky every month. Unsubscribe anytime, no spam.
Thanks for watching. If you have any questions or suggestions, please email me and Doodles. Happy homesteading. Bye-bye.